She laughed when you tried. She shrugged when you cared. She rolled her eyes when you stayed loyal. Now, she regrets it, quietly, privately, desperately. But you're not there to hear her apologize. You're done being someone's afterthought. You're done being the safety net for a woman who never respected your effort. And if that hits you deep, comment "never again" and listen till the end, because this is going to change your life. Number 1. She took you for granted. She takes you for granted the moment she senses that your love is guaranteed. Not because she's evil, not because you're not enough, but because people only value what feels earned, not handed out like a participation trophy. From the first moment you showed genuine care, texting first, planning dates, remembering the little things she mentioned casually, she began a subconscious evaluation. How far can I push? How much can I withdraw and still keep this attention? You're not crazy. You felt the shift. At first she was all in, fast replies, affectionate, emotionally present. But the moment she felt she had your loyalty secured like a backup plan, her effort changed. Not all at once. It started with her pulling away during conversations, not laughing as hard at your jokes, cancelling a plan with a half-hearted excuse. You told yourself she's busy, she's tired, she's stressed. You made every excuse to avoid the truth. She started seeing your effort as expected, not appreciated, and this is where it hurts. You, being a deeply committed man, assumed love meant showing up, especially when the other person starts drifting. You increased your effort thinking she needed support. You gave more thinking she'd snap out of it and return to the connection you built together. But you misunderstood something fundamental. You don't fix emotional distance by flooding the other person with more of what they're already ignoring. That's not love. That's self-erasure. You trained her to expect your presence regardless of her behavior. And now, you're stuck in a relationship dynamic where your loyalty has no impact, your effort has no value, and your presence doesn't move her heart. And it's not just her fault. It's yours too. Because at every turn you said yes when your soul screamed no. You laughed off her disrespect. You stayed quiet during moments you should have spoken. You rationalized her passive-aggressive comments, her indifference, her slow detachment. You made her comfort your mission while your peace bled out on the floor. And the most dangerous part, you did it all thinking it was noble. Stoicism isn't about being emotionally numb. It's about being emotionally responsible. The Stoic man doesn't chase what's walking away. He doesn't anchor himself to someone who stops rowing. He doesn't confuse suffering in silence for strength. He values reality more than fantasy. And the reality is brutal. She doesn't see you the way she used to. Because you taught her you'd always be there, no matter what version of her showed up. Now what do? How do you shift this? You stop. You stop overextending. You stop explaining. You stop showing up where you're clearly being tolerated, not celebrated. You mirror her energy not to be petty, but to be precise. If she withdraws emotionally, you don't chase. You get busy. If she takes hours to respond, you don't double text. You respond later, or not at all. If she cancels a plan, you don't reschedule. You make other plans. Because attention is currency, and yours has been devalued. Reclaiming your power doesn't start with confrontation. It starts with discipline. You wake up and decide that you will no longer beg for basic human decency, that you will no longer be a placeholder in someone else's emotional chaos, that you'd rather be alone in peace than with someone who confuses your loyalty for weakness. You begin to rebuild from within. You hit the gym, not for revenge, but for routine. You journal every night, not for nostalgia, but for clarity. You limit your screen time, detox from her social media, and you start reading books that strengthen your mindset. You listen to the words of Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, men who endured far more and still kept their center. You make a list of everything you've done for her in the last 30 days. Emotional labor, acts of service, patience, sacrifices. And then ask yourself, if the roles were reversed, would she have done the same for me? And the answer you fear is the one that sets you free. Because once you face it, you'll never ignore it again. You'll start noticing how one-sided it was, how your good morning texts were met with dry replies, how your check-ins were shrugged off, how your consistency didn't inspire effort, it created laziness. And from that realization, you draw a line in your soul, a line no one crosses again, not even her. And she will notice when your messages stop flooding her phone, when your need for validation disappears, when your presence becomes scarce, focused, selective. She'll panic, not because she loves you, but because she's lost control. The man she once managed with emotional distance is now managing himself, and it scares her. She might reach out, subtly or dramatically. She might test if she can reel you back in. But you've changed. You've tasted freedom. You've tasted your own power again. You've remembered that your worth is not proven by how much you endure, but by how quickly you walk away from disrespect. You're not heartless. You're healing. You're not cold. You're calibrated. You're not bitter. You're better, because now you no longer chase closure from someone who couldn't even give you commitment. You no longer seek peace in the place that stole it. You no longer break your own rules to keep someone who never had any. And here's the secret most men never learn. The moment you stop giving her everything is the moment she starts seeing you again. But by then, you won't need her to. You'll be too busy building, too focused on your routine, too grounded in your purpose. You'll have options, clarity, peace. And she'll be stuck in the memory of a man she couldn't break, only lose. She'll remember how you texted good morning every day without fail, how you asked about her dreams, her family, her goals, how you stayed present even when she gave you distance. And she'll regret it, quietly, deeply, but it won't matter, because you've moved on, not just physically, spiritually. You've ascended. You've become unavailable to disrespect, allergic to inconsistency, immune to manipulation. And the next woman, she'll meet a man who knows his value, a man who sets standards, not suggestions, a man who gives love, not just presents, a man who chooses partnership but never begs for it. And when you stand in that power, she who took you for granted will finally understand the cost. But she won't be able to afford you anymore, and now she can't even reach you. But you can reach something far greater. Because while she lost access to the man she took for granted, you now have access to the knowledge that rebuilds you stronger than ever. That's why I created the Stoic Relationship Blueprint for Men. Not just a book, but a guide for men who are done being confused, manipulated, or emotionally drained. And now, it's finally available in audiobook format, so you can take in these life-changing truths while walking, training, or clearing your head. No more guessing, no more suffering in silence. This blueprint answers the questions you've been screaming into your own thoughts. And the best part, once you own it, it's yours forever. A permanent weapon in your journey, always within reach. You don't just read this, you live it. The link is in the comments. Don't wait. Listen today and begin the life your future self will thank you for. Number 2. She thought you'd never walk away. She builds her confidence on your consistency, on the idea that you'll always be there no matter how little she gives, on the comfort that your emotions are hers to control without consequence. You don't even realize it at first, how subtly it begins. She starts testing the edges of your patience, not replying for hours to see if you'll still reach out, snapping at you when she's stressed to see if you'll still stay soft. She pushes buttons, cancels plans, withdraws affection. Why? Because in her mind, you're not a man. You're an emotional guarantee. She's confident you won't leave because you've shown her you'll do anything not to lose her. And that's where the power dynamic shifts from love to leverage. She doesn't need to pour into you anymore. She doesn't need to be kind, intentional, or even respectful, because she knows you'll explain it away. You'll say she's tired, she's been through trauma, she needs space. You'll reduce your standards to accommodate her inconsistency. You'll keep trying harder, thinking that effort equals value. But it doesn't. In her eyes, effort equals predictability. Predictability becomes boring. Boring becomes disposable. You're not her priority. You're her backup plan. The man she leans on when the guys she really wants give her nothing but chaos. You're the safe one, the one she brags about to her friends for how patient you are, while they all know she's not giving you half the energy you deserve. Have you ever stopped mid-text and asked yourself, why am I always the one fixing things? Why are you apologizing when she's the one who disrespected you? Why are you afraid of upsetting her when she clearly has no problem upsetting you? Because deep down, she's trained you to fear abandonment. She's conditioned you to believe that walking away equals failure, that choosing your peace is selfish, that letting go of her is weakness. And the longer you stay in this dynamic, the more you become a shell of yourself. You doubt your worth. You accept crumbs. You confuse loyalty with self-sacrifice. You bury your voice so she doesn't leave. But the truth is, you left yourself a long time ago. That's what she never expected. That one day, you'd wake up and realize that the love you're fighting for is killing you slowly. That every time you try to prove your value to someone who's blind to it, you bleed a little more. And here's where everything changes, the moment you stop. Not with words, not with drama, just with decisions. The morning you don't text first. The evening you don't call to check in. The weekend you make plans without explaining yourself. The week you stop giving her unlimited access to your heart. She'll notice. And at first, she'll act like she doesn't care. She'll post more, scroll more, laugh louder. She'll try to convince herself, and everyone watching, that your absence is meaningless. But she's lying. Because what she never prepared for was a version of you that values himself more than her attention. A version of you that doesn't beg for bare minimum. A version of you that understands walking away isn't weakness. It's rebirth. You reclaim your time, your energy, your vision. You stop showing up as the overly available emotional caretaker and start showing up as the man you were before you met her, focused, grounded, selective. You hit the gym with rage, turned into purpose. You read books that sharpen your mind and expose the games she played. You reconnect with your mission. You write out your values, your goals, your standards. You see, she thought you'd always be there because you always were, until you weren't. And that silence, that absence, it burns deeper than any confrontation. Because now she's left with no audience for her manipulation, no one to blame, no one to test. And here's what happens next. She'll reach out, carefully at first. A meme, a memory, a hey stranger. She won't apologize. She'll test the waters. She'll want to see if the door is still cracked open. And how you respond decides everything. If you go back, you reset the cycle. You teach her that all she needs to do is go quiet, wait for you to miss her, and slide back in. But if you stay silent, if you hold the line, if you remind yourself that your peace cost too much to gamble again, she'll spiral. Not because you're gone, but because her illusion of control is shattered. She told herself you'd never walk, that she could treat you like an emotional doormat forever. But now, you've flipped the script. You've become the man she thought you never could be. Independent, unavailable, untouchable. You start seeing her clearly for the first time, not as a dream, but as a distraction. Not as a partner, but as a project you should have never tried to fix. And in that clarity, you start healing. You reclaim your self-respect. You upgrade your standards. You become so focused, so dialed in, so self-contained, that the very thought of returning to her feels like betrayal. Betrayal of the man you fought to become. She thought you'd never walk away, and that belief gave her permission to walk all over you. But now she knows you're gone. Not because you blocked her, not because you posted quotes, but because you disappeared from her life without warning, and became a better man without needing to prove it. That's when regret sets in. That's when she replays everything you did. That's when she cries over the good morning texts she once ignored. That's when she sees your name pop up and feels the ache of a missed blessing. But by then, you're too far gone. Not angry, just evolved. And the most beautiful part, you didn't walk away to make her regret it. You walked away because you finally remembered who you were before she made you forget. Number 3. She confused your kindness for desperation. You opened your heart thinking it would be received with grace, but instead it became the very reason she disrespected you. She didn't see your effort as admirable. She saw it as predictable. She didn't see your care as noble. She saw it as needy. Because when a man shows genuine interest, gives unconditionally, listens without judgment, and commits without hesitation in today's world, it's not seen as strength, it's labeled as weakness. You hold the door, she rolls her eyes. You write the paragraph-long message, she barely skims it. You ask her if she's okay when her mood changes, and she's already texting someone else who didn't even notice she left. And all the while, you keep telling yourself, if I just love her harder, she'll see it. But she won't. Not because love can't change people, but because her perception of you is already set. She thinks you're the safe bet, the fallback, the nice guy she doesn't really want, but keeps around for rainy days. You show her consistency, and she calls it clingy. You offer stability, and she labels it as boring. You give her everything emotionally, and she feels nothing but entitlement. She confuses your kindness for desperation because she's used to attention coming from manipulation, not maturity. And in her eyes, if you're always available, always forgiving, always there, then you must not have options. That's the assumption. That's the modern curse. The more you love, the less she values it. Not because your love is flawed, but because her expectations are. She expects chaos, not calm, drama, not devotion. She wants to chase what hurts her and overlook what heals her. And that's where you lose. Not in reality, but in perception. You're doing everything right, but it feels wrong because the person you're doing it for doesn't know how to receive it. And here's the hard truth. It's not your job to teach her how to appreciate effort. That lesson comes through loss, not logic. She won't understand what you were until she loses access to it. That's how it works. That's why the man who pulls back often gets more attention than the one who overextends. Not because he's better, but because he's harder to reach. And scarcity breeds desire in a world addicted to validation. So you need to ask yourself, why are you trying to win someone over who isn't even fighting to keep you? Why are you trying to prove your worth to someone who keeps testing it instead of protecting it? Why are you breaking your back for someone who wouldn't bend her ego to meet you halfway? The answer isn't found in her. It's found in you. You chase her because you still don't believe you're enough on your own. You overgive because you're scared that if you stop, she'll leave. And she might. But if she does, that's the proof you've been needing all along. That it was never real. That you were just a placeholder, a convenience, a man who was never valued beyond the benefits you provided. And that realization should break you. Not to destroy you, but to rebuild you. Because once you understand that your love won't be seen by someone who isn't ready, you stop offering it so freely. You become selective, disciplined, intentional. You start pouring into yourself, your body, your purpose, your circle. You stop asking for effort and start demanding it with your absence. You stop tolerating inconsistency and start recognizing it as emotional immaturity. You replace desperation with direction. You replace waiting with working. And slowly your energy changes. You become quieter, colder, more calculated, not bitter, just better. Because now you know that kindness isn't weakness. It's a gift. And you don't give gifts to people who tear them apart. You give it to someone who sees the value before it's gone. So what do you do today? You start by tracking every moment you compromised your peace to protect her ego. You journal every time you said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. You write down the nights you lost sleep worrying about someone who sleeps just fine, knowing you're hurting. And then you burn it. Not literally, but emotionally. You draw a line that says, "I am done giving access to anyone who confuses my heart for a doormat." You tell yourself, out loud if you have to, that you are done making excuses for people who show you who they are with their actions. You unfollow, you delete the messages, you mute the story updates, not out of pettiness, but out of self-preservation. Because every reminder pulls you back into a story where you are the only one fighting for a happy ending. And that's not a relationship, that's delusion. You deserve reciprocation. You deserve to be chosen. You deserve to be appreciated without having to break yourself into pieces to earn it. And she deserves to sit in the silence she created, to scroll through your old texts and wonder why the man who once worshipped her no longer cares, to cry over the photos, not because she misses you, but because she realizes she lost a man who gave everything and now gives nothing. And you keep building, you keep growing, you keep becoming, not for revenge, not to prove a point, but because now you finally understand kindness is sacred. And you never hand sacred things to people who treat them like options. You only offer them to someone who sees the value in what you didn't have to say, what you did without being asked, and what you gave without ever expecting it back. That's love. That's strength. And from this day forward, you don't apologize for being kind, but you never again give it to someone who mistakes it for desperation. Number 4. Your growth threatens her ego. She never planned for you to outgrow her. She expected you to stay stuck in the same emotional place she left you, broken, doubting yourself, overanalyzing her last message, clinging to memories she already buried. That's what gave her comfort, the belief that she had such a grip on your mind that even after she lost interest, you'd remain loyal to the ghost of her. But when you stopped reacting, when you stopped watching her stories, stopped liking her pictures, stopped texting long paragraphs she never respected, that's when the shift began, not in her heart, but in her ego. You see, she doesn't miss you because of love. She misses the control she had when you needed her validation to feel valuable, when you begged for clarity, when you stayed through emotional neglect hoping things would change. But now, you've gone quiet. Not just in your messages, in your energy. You're not trying to be seen. You're not asking questions. You're not checking if she still cares. You've redirected that energy inward, and that threatens her more than any argument ever could. Because now she sees a version of you that doesn't require her approval. She sees a man who's waking up earlier, training harder, working longer, reading deeper. She sees you ignoring the parties, avoiding the distractions, skipping the small talk with people who used to waste your time. She sees your face leaner, your eyes clearer, your posture taller, and she knows you're not spiraling, you're evolving. That's where the panic sets in, because in her story she expected to remain the highlight of your timeline, the one that got away. But now she's not even a chapter. You're rewriting the whole book, and her role reduced to a footnote. You become the man she told herself didn't exist, the one she said she wanted, but pushed away the moment he started showing growth. Because here's what nobody tells you. A woman's ego isn't built on being loved. It's built on being needed. And the moment you stop needing her, you threaten everything she built her self-worth around. That's why she stalks your page anonymously. That's why her friends ask about you, even when she pretends she doesn't care. That's why she'll pop up with a vague message, a song lyric, a just checking in. Not because she misses you, but because she misses the version of herself who had your full attention. But now, she's replaced by your goals. And that's the worst punishment, being outgrown. Because when a man outgrows the woman who belittled his efforts, he becomes a mirror she can't look into without feeling shame. Every gym photo you post, every quote you share, every business win, every quiet milestone, it reminds her that you didn't just survive her neglect, you used it as fuel. You became the man her ego can't sit beside. The man who demands presence, not excuses, who leads, not pleads, who walks away the moment his peace is threatened, not the one who stays and pleads for bare minimum. And this isn't about revenge. This isn't about proving her wrong. This is about proving yourself right, that you were never the weak one, that your loyalty wasn't a flaw, that your consistency wasn't desperation, it was discipline misplaced. And once you found your direction, you became unstoppable. You no longer need closure because your growth is the closure. You no longer need her attention because your focus is louder. You no longer need her reassurance because you've built self-trust so solid, not even her silence shakes you anymore. You replaced her memory with habits, her voice with books, her criticism with a vision. And now, she sees it. Maybe not publicly, maybe she'll never admit it, but deep down, she knows she lost access to a man who no longer looks back. A man whose energy now demands effort. A man who doesn't argue, he just exits. And if you're not there yet, let this be your blueprint. Wake up earlier. Journal your goals. Hit the gym not for aesthetics, but for discipline. Invest in your learning. Detox from her digital breadcrumbs. Block her access to your peace. Stop chasing clarity from someone who thrived on your confusion. Create structure so solid in your life that love isn't your lifeline, it's your supplement. Build routines that make you proud. Audit your circle. Cut out distractions. Speak less. Move more. Make your presence so rare that she regrets not protecting it. Because when she sees the man you're becoming, the one she tried to humble, the one she doubted, the one she thought she broke, she'll realize she didn't just lose you. She lost the only man who would have built an empire around her if she'd just stayed loyal. And you? You keep building. Not for her, not for payback, but for the version of you that waited too long for someone else to validate what. You always knew that you were never the problem. You were the prize. Number 5. You became untouchable. You become untouchable the moment you stop negotiating your worth and start living like your energy is sacred, your presence is earned, and your peace is the ultimate currency no one can afford to disrupt. Not her, not anyone. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens the moment you realize that chasing love that constantly devalues you is the fastest route to self-destruction. It happens when you catch yourself checking your phone again and again, waiting for a message from someone who treated your devotion like an inconvenience. It happens when you stop explaining yourself, stop begging, stop rationalizing, and finally sit in the silence and ask, why do I need someone who clearly doesn't need me? That's when the healing starts. That's when you stop becoming reactive and start becoming relentless. And the irony is, you become most powerful when you stop trying to prove anything. You don't need closure. You don't need revenge. You don't even need her to see your worth, because you see it now. You wake up with purpose. You sleep with direction. You move in silence, not out of pain, but because not everyone deserves access to your thoughts. You become untouchable, not by playing games, but by leveling up so significantly that even thinking about the old version of yourself feels like remembering a ghost. You become the man who no longer responds to disrespect with emotion. You respond with absence. You no longer argue. You observe. You don't explain your boundaries. You enforce them. You don't chase apologies. You evolve beyond the version of yourself who tolerated the disrespect in the first place. That's what makes you different now. Before, you'd break yourself just to keep someone in your life. You'd bend your values, your time, your schedule, and call it compromise. But now, you don't bend, you build. You wake up early, not to impress, but to conquer. You train your body, not for aesthetics, but for mental discipline. You read books that challenge your thinking. You write down your goals and divide them into daily actions. You eliminate anything and anyone that makes you second-guess your direction. You are done explaining your worth to people who can't see past their own selfishness. The same woman who thought you'd always be around now scrolls through your old photos, wondering how the man she used to ignore became someone she's no longer worthy of. Because now, you're no longer that emotional backup plan. You're no longer available at her convenience. You're not the emotional servant she used to call when her favorite options disappointed her. You're not the placeholder. You're the standard. You're the man who commands attention without trying. You're the one who triggers silent envy, even from the people who once made you feel small. And it's not about external success. It's about internal stability. You walk differently now. You speak slower with more intention. You look people in the eye not to intimidate, but because you no longer have anything to prove. You're grounded, centered. You've mastered the art of not reacting, and that's terrifying to anyone who once fed off your need for approval. She sees it, the discipline in your routine, the silence in your inbox, the focus in your eyes. She sees a man who doesn't need her attention because he's too busy building a life she can't enter without a security clearance. That's when the guilt sets in. That's when the regret begins. But you don't respond, because you don't let people back into rooms they destroyed just because they're now uncomfortable outside. You don't fall for the emotional bait. You don't answer the vague messages. You don't replay the old memories. You remember the disrespect. You remember the conversations where your pain was minimized, where your loyalty was used against you, where your vulnerability was mocked or ignored. And you let that memory fuel your discipline. You build not out of hate, but out of hunger. You become untouchable because you finally understand your role is not to save anyone. Your role is to build, to protect your peace, to lead your life like it matters, because it does. And the more you focus on that mission, the more your energy repels manipulation. She might come back, they always do. But this time, you're different. This time you're not impressed by temporary attention. You're not swayed by sweet words or nostalgia. You're not moved by tears or guilt trips. You listen to actions and you move accordingly. Because now you live by a code. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. If it's inconsistent, it's irrelevant. If it doesn't honor you, it doesn't deserve you. And you don't announce it. You don't post about it. You don't flex. You just live it. Quietly, consistently, unapologetically, and the world feels it. The same people who overlooked you now try to study your blueprint. They want access, but it's gone, not out of malice, but because you no longer invite confusion into your clarity. You no longer water dead plants. You no longer entertain what once drained you. You no longer explain why you're distant. Because if someone can't see the difference between the man you were and the man you are, they're not qualified to speak to either. That's untouchable. That's power. That's the man you become when you stop trying to fix women who benefit from your brokenness. When you stop looking for love in places where your worth is ignored. When you start honoring the version of you who needed someone to say, "You were never the problem. You were just too much for someone who was never enough." And now, you live that truth every day, every breath, every representative, every chapter, every late night, every early morning. You become the standard that once seemed impossible. And when she sees you again, not in person, but in your growth, in your glow, in your silence, she'll realize she didn't just lose you. She lost the version of herself who felt powerful when you were weak. And now, she can't even reach you. If you're tired of being the man who gives everything and still gets treated like an option, this is your moment. Not tomorrow, not next month, now. Because the Stoic relationship blueprint for men isn't just an ebook. It's your weapon, your shield, your wake-up call, and now it's finally available in audiobook format, so you can listen while walking, grinding, and healing. No more guessing, no more being blindsided by the same games. It's linked in the comments, and once you grab it, it's yours forever. If you're ready to become the man who never gets taken for granted again, comment, "I choose peace," like this video, and subscribe, not just for you, but for the men who are still lost in the same pain you're escaping. Let's flood this world with truth and save a generation of men from years of regret. Get your copy now and never be the same again.